Yo guys, welcome to the video. This is Milky, and in today's video we're going to be going over the new setup for the Falling Thunder Invoker Monk. Obviously yesterday we made a video on Flicker Strike. Today we've got the Falling Thunder version. I thought this guy was dead, but thanks to some advice from Snoobay85, if you don't know who he is, I will link his channel in the description and you might see a video of his on the screen right now. We actually got a new setup going that utilizes cast on freeze. He made a video that pointed out some actual hidden gems of a buff to these skills, where they can actually trigger multiple times from the same instance of a skill that is used. Previously, they couldn't do that for some of them. So now we can actually incorporate freeze. Now, I was quite stubborn about doing this previously, as Profane Ritual, which is our main source of power charges, needs a corpse in order to be consumed, and if you shatter all the corpses, there are going to be none there. But after playing this for a whole day, I realized that this concern was largely unfounded. You don't shatter literally everything because we're only getting enough cold damage to keep things active, to keep things ticking. So there's that. Now, what did we do? So we've spec'd more into a hybrid lightning and cold version of Monk, not with our skill choices, but just with our damage split. We're still rocking a high physical damage weapon, although you should use the highest DPS weapon you can find that has attack speed, fizz damage. A bit of cold damage is going to go a long way with this new setup, as we are looking to freeze the mobs, and we're going to do that by using Tempest Flurry. Tempest Flurry is obviously the skill we've used the whole time. You may be thinking, why not Ice Strike? And the simple answer for me is I just prefer Tempest Flurry, and it's fast attacking. It means we trigger our bell more often. It means we fire out more charged staffs, but this could arguably work well with Ice Strike as well. Now, to do this, we're going to add in Cold Infusion, which is kind of, you could argue, counterproductive. Of course, we're making it deal less lightning damage, but we're adding a lot of damage to it as cold. So we can see the damage split is 527 to 833 cold, and this is more than enough to freeze the mobs in enough amounts to gain enough energy to trigger our Profane Ritual with cast on freeze. So this is all automatic. It's not as many power charges as we were getting in the past, but it is certainly enough to power through breaches, delirium, rituals, everything you can think of. It is more than enough. So the build still works absolutely fine, especially if you want to go with Falling Thunder, as I just love this skill. Is this better than Flicker Strike? Probably not. Flicker Strike in the end game is probably going to be the best version of this kind of power charge stacking selection of skills that you can go with, simply due to its mobility, and you're just going to be able to shatter everything. But I really like Falling Thunder, and I think it's so satisfying to use this skill that I'm going to work on this a bit more. I will do an updated version of the Flicker, should I investigate it more with this cold hybrid setup, but for right now, I'm going to be sticking to Falling Thunder. So what changed from what we were doing before? Well, as first mentioned, we added in Cold Infusion, and we added in Magnified Effect, as well as Ice Bite onto our Tempest Flurry. What this means is we're getting a ton of extra damage as cold damage, allowing us to freeze, and when we do freeze, we get another amount of cold damage that is added globally to all our attacks, including Charge Staff, Falling Thunder itself, that gives us extra cold damage, which is then going to cause us to freeze other mobs off the screen with Falling Thunder. And then as we freeze mobs, all that energy is going to come into our cast on freeze, which you can see has a 94% energy gain modifier. So every time we freeze a mob, we're going to gain around 19 energy, and then we're going to cast Profane Rituals, which have chances to give us more charges, and we of course have the chance for our Falling Thunder not to consume. So we can really get into a position where we can just spam this skill. The best case for this skill is definitely in breaches, as I'm showing you with the footage behind, but it allows us to also utilize Herald of Ice, which is an incredibly powerful skill. It deals an explosion based on your attack damage when you kill a frozen enemy. It shatters the corpse, and it deals a massive amount of attack damage in an AoE around the target. So this allows us to really magnify our clear that we couldn't do before, when I was under the false impression that shattering corpses was going to be too much of a hindrance for this build. Now, as for the rest of the skills, we've got Tempest Spell with Rage, Overabundance, Heavy Swing, Conk Effect. Charge Staff is supported by Persistence, Innovate, Lightning Infusion, and Primal Armament. Herald of Ice, we have Shock Infusion, Elemental Focus, and Cold Mastery. It is quite disappointing that we can't use Magnified Effect in Herald of Ice, but what I found, weirdly, is that we're doing too much damage with our charged staff a lot of the time. We're not getting our freezes because our charged staff sometimes kills everything before we can even touch it with our Tempest Flurry, which is quite ironic. But yeah, so we had to put Magnified Effect on our Tempest Flurry, as well as getting quality on our Tempest Flurry in order to actually freeze the mobs. If you don't have a 6-link, you're going to have to drop Inspiration and chug your Mana Flask. There's no other way about it. As I did make the corrections to this build, or a furthering of the build post-nerf to cast on Shock, it did mean that some of the ways to fix the build are a bit more expensive, and unfortunately, a 6-link isn't mandatory, but it's going to feel a lot better when you get this. And then Cold Master on the end. For Falling Thunder, we have Ambush. I'll talk about that in a second. Long Shot, Ricochet, Perpetual Charge, and Acceleration. Always the skill on the end you can drop, so you can drop Acceleration. Ambush is very important because we have 100% more critical hit chance against enemies that are on full life. This skill has an enormous amount of range, and it's going to off-screen things, meaning that once you reach 50% crit, you essentially have 100% crit, because you're doing 100% more critical hit chance. More is obviously a multiplier, so double this value, and we would have 114% crit. Obviously, we can't do 140%, but you get the idea. I'm got a bit of overkill crit. 50% would be lovely, because obviously you'd be critting all the time with your Falling Thunder. For auras, we've still got our Ghost Dance, Wind Dancer, and Herald of Thunder. Ghost Dance supported by Fast Forward, Wind Dancer by Pin, Lockdown, and Wind Wave, and then Herald of Thunder by Blind, Lightning Mastery, and Maim. So that is the setup for our skills. And for the tree, we haven't really changed all that much, except for grabbing some freeze buildup on the quarterstaff nodes here in order to allow us to freeze more easily. And everything else is pretty normal. As for crit, again, you want to get to that 50% crit value. Do it as you can. It's going to be around 80, 85 where you're going to get enough points to spec into everything. And an important node to grab that we didn't have before is Essence of the Mountain. Of course, we want to get that extra damage as cold damage because it's going to allow us to freeze the mobs more easily. I've not had the opportunity to cast this on on lower damage values than what is showing here, but I have had members of my chat confirm that even with an average of 300 main hand cold damage on their Tempest Flurry, they freeze often enough. Now, there is one alternative to this setup that you can absolutely use if you wish. If you liked the playstyle of Reaper's Invocation that I've spoke about in previous videos, where you can reactivate the skill after storing up casts, and then consume the corpses that way, you absolutely can do that with Elemental Invocation. It's just a one-to-one swap with Cast on Freeze. So you just put that in, put all the supports in. It's the exact same thing. And it's just, this gives you a bit more control, but it is an extra button to press. I'd say that Elemental Invocation definitely provides more power charges, but you have to press the button, and a lot of people don't want to have to do that. Cast on Freeze is, of course, all automated. So that's it for here. I did end up getting my 4th Ascendancy, which we're going to put in I Am the Blizzard. Without this, again, you're going to be fine. If I show you my damage without this, we can go to Tempest Flurry, and we have still 400 to 600. As I said, about 500 is okay. If you have really low, then what you can try and do is get a weapon with cold damage on it. So you can see this one has a low amount of cold damage, but it should be more than sufficient to increase the cold damage on our Tempest Flurry by a decent amount. Yep, then we go up to 420 to 808. And you can also get cold damage rolls on your rings or gloves. So that's where you're going to get your cold from in order to do it. Now, don't overkill it on cold. If you overkill it on the cold, then you will shatter everything. And if you find yourself doing that, then you just need to dial it in a bit on your sources of cold. So let's say you get it on your gloves, your ring, and your weapon, and then you're freezing literally everything. Then just drop the Essence of the Mountain node, for example. And you're going to do less cold. Maybe you would spec into I Am the Thunder later on if you're just freezing everything a little too much. So many options available to us. In terms of defense, we're still chilling on 73% evasion, 65% armor. A lot of people have asked me why I choose to go with evasion and energy shield, and the simple answer is we get to use Ghost Dance, and we still have enough evasion. Obviously, the more flat evasion you get, it's kind of got like, it's not DR, but you get less of a percent as you increase in flat evasion. So there comes a point where it's harder and harder to gain a percentage of chance to evade, as opposed to me having more energy shield to gain back with my Ghost Dance. You can also use Grim Feast which is a viable alternative, which gives energy shield overflow, and it goes up to double your ES. So you'd be at 1,800 ES on my build. But I'll have to look into that a bit more. For gear, it's the exact same, and all this will be linked in the planner. I'll just mouse over it real quick. I've not really changed any of the gear. It's basically just been gem swaps that have made this possible. And there it is. So what can this build do? Well, today I have been clearing T15 maps. From the footage, you can see I absolutely annihilate breaches in these maps. I've had situations where I've literally full cleared a breach, where no mobs spawn in the breach anymore. I didn't even know that was possible. I also managed to kill the Pinnacle boss for Breach, difficulty 1 and difficulty 2, and I got my 4th Ascendancy by defeating the Sanctum boss. So the build can do a lot of things. As for bossing itself, as people will definitely ask, we're going to do a Hand of Chiula setup. So everyone asks how you get power charges against bosses. I will say it again, as I say it every video and still get asked about it. In normal content, in normal mapping, you know there is a boss in the map. You can prepare for it, you can take charges with you to fight the boss, and those charges last for over a minute if you use your charge staff. So if it takes you more than a minute to kill a map boss, your problem isn't power charges, it's your damage. Now, if you go into a Pinnacle boss, a situation where you know you cannot gain power charges from corpses and take them in with you, then what I've been doing is using Hand of Chiula, Sniper's Mark, Culling Strike, and I'd put on my Profusion. And then I would respec my tree 2 points. I'll probably just yank them out of here. And I go into Resonance so that when I gain Frenzy Charges, when I gain Frenzy Charges, I will instead gain a power charge. And what Sniper's Mark does is it makes the next crit against the target a chance to give you, 100% chance to give you a power charge. So we can just generate that way. And it's more than enough in a boss fight. You could also use Siphoning Strike, but I prefer the proactiveness of Hand of Chiula. I can choose when I want to use it. It also doubles up as a dash for me to go out, dodge an ability, and Hand of Chiula back in, as well as generating a charge. So it's been more than enough for me, and I've used it to kill the Pinnacle bosses today, and I will continue to use it in the future. As for where the build goes next, I understand, I've been doing a lot of updates to this. It's changed quite a bit. You're all probably sick of me making you respec. What I will say, you absolutely don't have to respec from the Flicker build I made yesterday if you see this. The Flicker build is fine. So many people saw me playing this today and thought Flicker was somehow dead. It's been one day, nothing's changed. The Flicker build is fine. This build is very good. If you prefer Falling Thunder, then this is for you. If you prefer Flicker, yesterday's build is absolutely fine. Also, Snoobay has his cast on free setup that I'm going to link in the description. If you would like to check out his cold version of Flicker Strike, it looks very, very promising. That's the best I've got for you today. I appreciate you watching. If you liked the videos, like the videos, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.